All right, so we are talking about solving equations and inequalities. Today in class we talked about how we have this set of instructions, but it's not going to work forever. We're about to start solving literal equations. Literal equations are situations where instead of solving for a variable, we're actually rearranging stuff. So we're going from this, which is our formula for the area of a trapezoid, into this, which is the same formula but equal to h. We're going to talk about that next week. But just like I did today in class, let me just kind of briefly talk to you about the evolution of our our equation knowledge. So you started off in elementary school and your equation problems looked kind of like this. They looked like something plus 3, so like a box, like the mystery box plus 3 equals 7. And then the strip model looked like this. You had 3 plus something equals 7. Then we also had the same thing with multiplication. 3 times something, next it was the x, equals 6. And there was like a 6, but broken into 3 parts. And you had to figure out what 3 things made 6. Okay? So that's how we did it in elementary school. And, you know, it started to get a little bit more closer to regular equations in 6th grade. So in 6th grade, you started doing one-step equations. So you did one-step additive, which was where we were adding or subtracting something to x, or multiplicative, where we were multiplying by a whole number or a fraction, or you might have actually seen this. So that would be dividing, okay? But these were only one step because you only had to do one thing to solve the problem. You either had to subtract 3 or add 5, divide by 3, multiply by 3, something like that to solve the equation. So in 6th grade, you did one step. In 7th grade, we added in two-step, which means I had to do both of these things at the same time. So 2x plus 3 equals 7, where I had to subtract 3 from both sides and then divide by 2. So that was my 2 steps. Or 1/3 x minus 7 equals 5. I had to add 7 to both sides and then multiply by 3. So that was what we did in 7th grade. So we went from one step to 2-step. And then in 8th grade, we started doing these 2 steps with variables on both sides. And actually, I have this down as 9th grade, but this is actually 8th grade too. This right down here is my 9th grade stuff. So that's also 8th grade, okay? So in 8th grade, we started doing kind of more complicated equations. So we started doing stuff like 2x plus 3 equals 4x minus 8, which is equations with variables on both sides. And those were kind of more like 3-step equations where I had to like get the x's together, get the numbers together, and then divide to find 1x. We started seeing stuff like this where we had to distribute and we had to combine terms to actually get it to solve it. So our equations got more complex in 8th grade, which was what you did last year in K-Level 7th. Well, now we're in algebra and we're going to be doing this step, which is what I just talked about, where we take a formula or like volume equals length times width times height, and instead of writing it in terms of volume with volume by itself, now I want height by itself. So height equals volume divided by length times width. So we're going to start rearranging equations and really manipulating equations. So we got to make sure that we're good at this stuff. So that's what we're going to talk about right now. Okay? So the steps that I've given you here are the steps that I use for the stuff that we do in 8th grade. When we get to the literal equation stuff, this isn't going to work anymore. Okay, so the first step, which is not on here, we're going to put a little star here, is we're going to add invisible one coefficient to naked variables. Naked means they don't have anything on them. So if I just see an x like this, I'm going to add a 1 to it because I want it to have a coefficient. It's kind of just sitting there naked. I want to give it a coefficient because otherwise I'm not going to be able to tell. It's going to mess me up later on, okay? Then our first step is to distribute. So if I see parentheses with a number in front of them, I'm going to distribute to multiply that through. Once I do that, I'm going to look and see, are there any fractions? We do not love fractions. We hate fractions. We want to do distribution before fractions because sometimes distributing takes care of those fractions for us. Next thing we want to do is combine like terms, which is where we take our terms that have the same variable or combo of variables after the coefficient, ones that are identical after the coefficient, we put them together. If I was combining these three, I'd say 1x plus 2x plus 3x, that's 6x. Okay, so that's where I combine up things that are the same. Next, I'm going to get all my x's on one side of the equal sign. I always get my x's on the left side, but if you put them on the right side, it's not wrong. There's some graphing things that are easier when the x's are on the left side, which is why I do it that way. And then whatever side I get the x's on, I want to get the numbers on the other side because my goal is to get one x by itself. And then I want to find one x, which I usually do by dividing. Now, right here, step 6 here, this right here is where inequalities and equations differ. This is where they don't differ, but this is the extra step we have to do for inequalities. And honestly, you can do this step for equations too. It's not going to cause you any problems if you do. And that step that you would do is, hold on one second. Sorry about that. My camera, my computer freaked out. So that step that we're going to do there is we're going to find 1x. And the extra step we're going to do here is if the coefficient is negative, we're going to flip the inequality sign. Okay, and a way to remember this is cone flip. C-O-N-E-F-L-I-P. Coefficient, negative, flip the inequality sign. Okay, now it doesn't matter if we do this now, because if we flip an equal sign, it just looks like an equal sign. But if I flip a less than sign, it turns into a greater than sign. So it's not going to kill me to check this on an equation, because if I check it every time, then I'll never forget. Okay, so that's the kind of all the pre-stuff I'm going to do. Now we did these notes in class. Okay, so if you need to, you can pause and take a look at these notes now. I'm going to do a few examples on the next page, but this is in case you need to see what they look like, what we did in class. This is just basically, we looked at all the different types of solutions that we might see. We did a few examples of some crazy looking equations, and we talked about how right here, so this is just a typical variables on both sides equation. When I get to the something x equals something step, I'm always going to highlight it, because this is where I'm going to think, do I have to flip the sign? I'm always going to stop right here and have that kind of mental conversation with myself, okay? Because right here, if I look at this number, if it's negative, I flip the sign. Well, it's not negative, so I leave my sign alone. Over here, same thing. But this one is negative, so when I divide by this negative sign, I have to flip my sign. So I do this literally as soon as I see this negative coefficient, that's when I'm going to go ahead and flip my sign. All right, my stuff keeps going crazy. So I'm not going to do these problems with you, but what I am going to do is I'm going to go over here to these pages. Actually, I'm going to go to this page here, page 8 in your notes, because what I want to do is I want to do some problems that have inequalities and solve them and show you how that works. And then that way you can see, because I mean the only difference between an equation and inequality is that for an inequality I flip the sign, and for an equation I need to worry about it. Okay, so let's look at this problem here first, the one on the top left on page 8. And again, page 4 has, information about, all the steps that we just did. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do, according to the steps that I have, is I'm going to look for naked numbers. And I don't see any here, so I'm good to go. Then I'm going to distribute. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this 1/4 and distribute it. It might get rid of the fractions, it might not, but that's going to be my first step always. Like I was telling people in class today, when I see like a fraction like that, remember, I'm not testing you on your ability to multiply fractions. I'm testing you on your ability, I'm interested in your ability to solve equations. So if you can't figure out what 1/4 of 2x is, or 1/4 of 12, put it in the calculator, okay? You don't need to do this in your head. We do need you to be able to do it eventually, but for now, again, I want to make sure that you're practicing the skill we're learning, okay? So 1/4 of 2 is 2/4, which is 1/2 x. 1/4 of negative 12 is negative 3. I didn't do anything to the 3x, so it comes, I don't know why I just wrote a 4 there. So that 3x comes straight down, minus 3x. The sign comes straight down, my inequality sign. And I didn't do anything on the other side, so I'm going to leave that alone. Okay? Next step is we hate fractions. Okay? So what that means is I'm going to get rid of this fraction. The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to multiply everything by the common denominator. Since I only have one denominator, that's the one I'm going to multiply it by. So I'm going to multiply every single thing in here, all of them, by 2. So 2 times 1/2 is 1x. 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. 2 times negative 3x is negative 6x, greater than. 2 times negative 3x is negative 6x. 2 times negative 10 is minus 20. Okay? Now, I'm going to start combining my like terms. Over here, again, I put my walls up in front of every plus and minus sign to help me keep track of it. And if it helps you, draw a highlighter line down the middle so you can keep track of where the inequality sign is. Because remember, I'm only going to combine like terms on one side of the equal sign. Okay? So 1x, I see right here, I have a 1x and a negative 6x. When I put those together, I have negative 5x. And then I have minus 6. I didn't do anything with it. It comes straight down. My greater than or equal to sign comes straight down. Negative 6x minus 20. I didn't do anything with them. They go straight down to the next line. Okay? Now, I'm at the part where I'm going to get all my x's on one side. And I like my x's to be on the left. So I'm going to move this negative 6x over here, and it becomes positive 6x. That leaves me 1x minus 6 is greater than or equal to negative 20. Now, I want to get this x by itself, so I move this over here, and I have 1x is greater than or equal to, this becomes plus 6, negative 14. So x is greater than or equal to negative 14. Right here, and I probably should have had this conversation. The reason I didn't have the conversation is because x is positive, right? I have 1x, that's what I want. But I should look right here. If this is positive, then I don't need to flip my sign, and it is, so I'm good to go. Okay, so that's the first problem. I'm going to try and write smaller on the next one because, whoa, that took up a lot of space, okay? So this, just to clarify this is 2.5n plus 6n equals 8 plus 8n plus n. I think that's what it looks like. You know what? That's what we're going to do. We're going to see what happens. Okay? So, looking at this one, again, I'm going to draw myself a little line down my inequality sign. Okay? Over here, I see some combining like terms I can do. I see 2.5n and positive 6n. Over here, I see a naked number, and then I see more combining I can do over here. I don't see any distributing because there's no parentheses. 2.5 plus 6 is 8.5n, less than or equal to. 8n plus 1n is 9n plus 8. Okay, now I want to move this 9n over to that side of the equal sign. It becomes minus 9n. Now I have a negative 0.5n less than or equal to 8. Okay, so again, this is the point where I highlight. Now again, if this was an equation, it's not going to hurt me to highlight. It's not going to hurt me to highlight it. But I look at the number in front of the variable. It's negative, so that means immediately I'm going to flip my sign because I'm going to forget later if I don't. Now when I divide by negative 0.5, I get n is greater than or equal to negative 16. Okay, so again, this is why I want you highlighting right here because I want us to make sure that we don't miss it. Okay, this one down here, again, so those are all minus signs, and that is a greater than sign. Okay, so I see 3, p minus 3, minus 5. Oh, there's just a lot of stuff here. Let's just start. I see one naked number right there. I'm going to give him a 1. Now I'm going to distribute. Remember, I stop when I hit the closing parentheses. 3 times 1, p is 3p. 3 times negative 3 is minus 9. Minus 5p is greater than negative 3p minus 6. Okay, now I look for like terms that I can combine. On this side, I see I've got 3p minus 5p. That's negative 2p minus 9. It's greater than negative 3p minus 6. Now I'm ready to start moving my stuff around. I want to get all of my variables on the left side, so that I move that over there. It becomes positive 3p. Negative 2p plus 3p is 1p. I keep saying p. I'm sorry. I am so immature, and I'm sorry that just happened. And then this is negative 6. Here I'm going to move this negative 9 over here, and it becomes positive 9. I'm just going to kind of scoot this all over here real quick. Now I have 1p greater than 3. And again, right here, even though I know it's just 1 and I don't need to do it, I'm still going to look just to keep myself in the habit. I have 1p, it's positive, p is greater than 3, I am good to go. All right, so that is how we do this. We're going to actually do some inequality word problems. We're going to do those on Monday together, so don't stress about these over here too much. And there's another video coming on how to use the calculator to solve this stuff. I don't want you to worry about solving the inequalities in the calculator. I will show you in the video, but I don't want you to stress about it too much.